The electricity minister's suggestion after his power station visit recently that we should consider extending the life of old coal-fired power stations has been met with some concern. Over the weekend, seeming support for his stance from State-Owned Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan. Business Unity South Africa says if this move is approved by the Cabinet, it could have some serious consequences, not only for money pledged for us to revamp our electricity in line with green targets, it could also have an impact on business. Joining me now is Happy Khambule, Environment and Energy Manager at Business Unity South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. So over the weekend, you were part of this panel discussion at the Presidential Climate Commission. Did you get a sense from that, and I know Pravin Gordhan was present there as well, did you get a sense government really is reconsidering the targets they've set themselves for decommissioning these coal-fired power stations that are getting really old now?
Thank you for having me, and yeah, thanks for the question. I think what's happening is that because we are stuck in a situation of crises as well as a lot of exceptions, we're getting a sense from the government that they are looking at all available options, and even those available options might not be kosher. So the statements that they're making in most cases tend to reveal that they are starting to have those kinds of conversations, and they're looking to at least address the primary problem right now, which is the electricity crisis. But I think what we are saying is we are viewing this situation, or rather the remedy of the electricity situation, in a very bifurcated way. We should be looking at it as an opportunity to actually undergo the necessary structural reforms that need to occur in the electricity supply industry. And part of that is making sure that we actually decarbonize.
And I mean, it makes sense on a number of levels from a climate perspective, absolutely. But does Pravin Gordhan have a point? Suggesting that we might be unfairly held to these targets. You know, he says that European countries have been very quick to ignore their own targets when the electricity or the power crisis came due to the war in Ukraine. Couldn't we also make a fair argument that we need to delay our targets, be given a bit of a reprieve given our crisis?
Well, the targets are ours, right? We're the ones who made those targets. We're the ones who put them into documentation and legislated them, and in some cases put them into policy and communicated them to the world. So it's our targets, and we've built not only a reputation, but even built large, not only industries, but large strategies for companies, as well as the trajectory of South Africa through the NDP and the various other planning integrated plans on decarbonization. So at this moment in time, when we have a blip in the situation or in the implementation process, we then quickly want to backtrack. I think that's quite dangerous, because it basically means that there's going to be rarely any predictability in the application of policy.
I hear you. If we go back on those targets, let's say Cabinet does vote to go back on those targets, find money, heaven knows where from, to revamp some of these power stations, would we be penalised? I mean, would it mean that some of our money pledges don't come through, say, from the EU? Would it have an impact on, let's say, exporters? A suggestion they might be slapped with some sort of penalties because we've not stuck to our own targets.
Well, the different levels in which we would be, I'd say, penalized or put to task. One of that is that our general products, our services, our goods, they're quite carbon intensive. So in the fact that the rest of the world is looking towards transitioning away from carbon emissions and high intensity in not only the products but the services which they receive from other countries or other suppliers, South Africa would then be downgraded even further in that context. So in a situation where a region like the EU is going to start instituting a carbon border adjustment tax, that means our products are going to be non-competitive, and it means that we're going to be pricing ourselves out of markets which we traditionally used to play in, and we're giving other people or other countries a leg up when we are able and we've got the necessary resources, including the time, in order to implement the necessary processes. And I think one thing here which is a problem is that we're using a short-term issue to determine our entire future. And we know where we need to go because that's where the entire world is going. The very same people we are complaining about, they are the ones who are investing millions and billions of their currencies into low carbon development, as well as pushing themselves to only buy and procure stuff which is of a low carbon intensity. So we won't be able to sell anything, we won't be able to participate, and in most cases, as you speak about the funding, we won't be able to access the necessary funding, particularly the one that we've basically pioneered around the world, which is the Just Energy Transition Package.
So suggesting really that we would look a bit silly going back on the targets we've set ourselves, that we have broadcast to the world. But also my understanding is it's going to cost a lot of money if we decide to really revamp some of those old coal-fired power stations. So let's talk about the money. I mean, would that have an implication for our national fiscus if Treasury had to come up with the money? You know, one of the arguments that I heard from Ted Blom last week is that actually alternative power, Eskom is spending a huge amount of money and there's a lot of money being put into that as well. What ultimately makes more financial sense?
Well, we're spending a lot of money on diesel to keep the coal-powered power stations running. And we're not spending yet enough money to bring in more gas or more renewables, which are basically alternative sources from what we currently have. So if we do go this route of revamping these power stations, it's going to cost a lot of money. And then secondly, we're not actually looking at a better option, which is to sweat the assets that we already have. Take the parts of the power stations that aren't working, that are working, from the ones that are being decommissioned, and put them in the power stations that are still yet to be working, that are still working in this case. So we can the assets and then use them in the appropriate sense without having to do a major overhaul of the entire power station. And then secondly is that we've started to look at electricity beyond just it being produced from Eskom. We are looking at bringing in private sector players. We're looking at making sure that consumers at a household and a commercial level are becoming prosumers. So the industry is changing, and the requirements for us not to have high emissions is one of top of mind, but also the realization of energy democracy at a lower level is something that is also driving the need for us to be able to have diversification of not only sources, but also technologies.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Happy Khambule is Environment and Energy Manager, Climate Manager as well at Business Unity South Africa. And Busa's message seems to be stick to the plan on the Just Energy targets. And we've got plenty more business news coming up.